Lindye, you do it lightly, and if you do it again, be careful that I am not polite to you. Get out. Wang Jianqi glared at Lindye with a gloomy face, and Lindye unceremoniously told him to leave quickly. Huh? Other. Little comrade Ye, don't be so excited. If you have something to say, let's discuss something. Just say how you can get rid of your anger. As long as you say, we will definitely do it. If you need anything, you can also say, I will definitely help you. Lindye leaned against the wall with her eyes closed and said nothing. Why don't I help you find a job? Li Shuangqin's father asked tentatively. It's not easy to find a job in this day and age. Especially for children in the countryside. If someone's child goes to work in a factory, even if it is just a temporary worker, it is a matter of envy to others, and Li Shuangqin's father can be said to be very tempting to give such conditions. Confusion. It's a pity that Li Shuangqin's father met Lindye after the crossing, and a job can't make the slightest ripple in her heart. Li Shuangqin's father looked at Lindye's unmoved appearance, and his heart was a little sunk. His eyes rolled for a moment, and he turned around and slapped Li Shuangqin. You kid, how can you say that you can make such a joke with your sister-in-law? You say, what will happen to our family and brother Wang's family in the future? You say you kid is joking, and you don't know how serious it is. What are you beating my daughter for? It's just a joke, it's not too much to kill. She wants to let her do it if she wants to do it. I want to see her virtue. Who can believe her words? When Li Shuangqin's mother saw her daughter being beaten, her face immediately turned gloomy. That's it, brother Li, what are you doing playing the piano? The piano girl is a more obedient child. You don't listen to what others say, you just believe it. That is, your own child has to know that it hurts. You don't know what your own children are like? Don't be wronged. Yes, just like Lindye, how can you believe what she says? Yes, no one will believe what she said. If she really dares to sue, then let her sue, and when the time comes, all of us will testify to you. Our Qin girl is not that kind of person at all. Lindye looked at the ducks in front of her and kept quacking, and couldn't help but bend the corners of her mouth sarcastically. Deputy Director Zhang knew that something was wrong when he saw Lindye's expression, and hurriedly wanted to stop these people from continuing to mess around, but when he didn't want to turn his head, he saw an unexpected person standing behind the crowd. Deputy Director Zhang opened his mouth, wanting to call out to his eldest brother, looked at the old man standing beside him, and shouted in a proper manner, Shou Long, Dean Zhang. This is someone from your factory? A middle-aged man who looked a bit like Deputy Factory Director Zhang frowned and looked at the messy people gathered outside the ward. Are there any rules? Do you know that this is a hospital and you can't make loud noises? Deputy Director Zhang, that's how you manage people? Dean Zhang glared at Deputy Director Zhang with hatred, and Deputy Director Zhang opened his mouth and couldn't say a word. He didn't know that Li Shuangqin's mother would bring these women here. Although their factory is under militarized management, after all, it is a local factory, and where there are troops so well behaved. What's more, these women usually have long hair and short knowledge, and they only know the goods of the East and the West. First. Long. Dean Zhang. Li Shuangqin's father's face was a little unpleasant. He never thought that he would meet the head of the army here. Long. First. Long, Dean Zhang. Wang Jianqi said hello in a regular manner. Dean Zhang has seen him. He is the brother of Deputy Director Zhang, and he is usually very polite when he sees them. Head. Long, he has also seen it, but he has only seen it once, and he still borrowed Wang Jiangwo's light. At this time, when he saw the leader of the army here again, his heart was slightly excited, but he was a little annoyed to meet under such circumstances today. Thinking that he failed to give the head Chang left an excellent impression, and couldn't help but feel a little resentful of Lindye in his heart. Lindye looked at the few new people who walked in expressionlessly. There are some people who are like Deputy Factory Director Zhang, that is, the meaning of the long image she has seen in the memory of the fat beauty. It is the Director Zhang of the Health Center of Unit 7302. That somewhat serious uncle should be the head of the troops. Long, Lindye has never seen it, but it is mentioned in the original book that he is Wang Jiangwo's father's comrade in arms. It can be said that without this leader, Wang Jiangwo and Wang Jianxi would not be able to get out of the ravine. Behind the leader of the unit were two young men, one was supposed to be the leader's orderly, and the other was long and handsome, although he was wearing ordinary clothes, but his all-round bearing was impossible to ignore. The man's eyes were a little deep, and he looked at Lin Die's eyes a little inexplicably. Lin Die squinted. I don't know, why did that person look at her with such eyes? Don't factories have to go to work? The leader of the unit glanced at the women who were still chattering just now, but at this time there were some people who shrank their heads like mice. They. Deputy Director Zhang didn't know what to say. At this time, he regretted it to death. Why didn't he drive them all back when he saw them at the door just now? Lao Zhang, I don't care about anything else, but you let me down a little when these messy things happened in our hospital. The leaders of the army ignored Deputy Director Zhang, but just turned his head and looked at Dean Zhang with some seriousness. This is a military hospital, not a vegetable market. How can anyone enter casually, and it is so noisy that it affects the patient's rest? Lao Zhang, I trust you and hand over the entire hospital to you to manage. That's how you manage the hospital? Such a hospital, how can you let me rest assured that my fighters will be handed over to you to take care of? My warriors are my life. Gentsi, let me tell you, Zhang Dongping, my soldiers can't suffer the slightest grievance, otherwise, I'll let you raise your head to see you. Yes, first. Chief, I will never let the warriors be wronged. Today's thing is that I didn't manage it well. I admit my mistakes, I will actively correct them, and it will definitely not be like this in the future. Dean Zhang gave a military salute solemnly, and the expression on his face was a little serious. Let irrelevant people leave, and in the future, no one else will be allowed to enter the military health center except for necessary care. Yes. Xiao Zhang, you have to manage your people well. The leader of the unit turned his head to look at Deputy Director Zhang. His face was serious, and his voice was somewhat meaningful. Although your factory is a local factory, it is also a related unit of the army, and you claim that the factory is a militarized management, so you manage it like this? First. Long, it's me who didn't manage people well, it's me who didn't do my job well, and I caused trouble to the hospital. I'm really sorry. Don't worry, when I go back, I will definitely criticize them well, and I will never let anything like this happen. I hope you can do what you say. Yes, sure. Deputy Factory Director Zhang stood upright. At this moment, Deputy Factory Director Zhang was annoyed to death, and once again regretted why he didn't drive these women back just now. Seeing that Accountant Li was still standing there stunned, he couldn't help but reach out and push him. Accountant Li understood, and hurriedly gave his daughter-in-law a look. Li Shuangqin's mother immediately pushed the woman next to her, and the woman hurriedly pulled the women in the factory out of the health center. It's so noisy here, what about the doctors at the hospital? Troop Chief Long frowned. Here. Dr. Zhao walked out from behind the crowd. I just went to work, I went to the back to check the ward. I don't know what happened here, I'm really sorry. How's the warriors doing? The report begins with Long, the fighters are recovering from their injuries very well. The leader of the unit nodded, looked around again, and couldn't help frowning again. Why is this so small? And clutter? Is this a utility room or a ward? First. It used to be a utility room, but now, it's used as a ward. Dean Zhang hurriedly took over. You also know that the wards have been tense these days, so we, Lao Chao, and Xiao Zhao decided to pour out a few rooms to make temporary wards, and this one is one of them. The clutter in the house was put in the past, and it hasn't had time to clean it up yet. The old man glanced at Dean Zhang. Since you have decided to use this place as a ward, let's clean it up quickly. Don't make it look like a warehouse is not a warehouse, and a ward is not a ward. Yes. Don't procrastinate. Yes. The leader's voice was flat but not angry, and Dean Zhang's face was involuntarily serious. Deputy Director Zhang's heart was a little admired, but Accountant Li's heart was a little anxious. Fat girl, sick? How does it feel? Maybe he was used to being serious, And the troop leader looked a little stiff when he smiled, but his eyes were very kind. I fell and felt fine. The management is not in place, so you are wronged. If you have any requirements, just mention it, I will call the shots for you. Mainyo shook her head, thank you, it's already good, I don't have anything to ask for. Then you have a good rest and strive for a speedy recovery. Okay, thanks. Lin Dian nodded lightly. Lao Chao, take me to see the comrades who were injured a few days ago. Yes. Lao Zhang stays here to handle things well, writes a written report tomorrow, reports today's things in detail, and then makes a detailed management plan. Yes. Head. Long turned around and prepared to leave. When he left, he glanced at Wang Jianjian, and his eyes were a little intriguing. Wang Jianqi was very annoyed in his heart, and opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Chang had already turned his head. When the leaders of the troops left, Dean Zhang breathed a sigh of relief, looked at Deputy Director Zhang, and then at Accountant Lian Li Shuangqin, and suddenly felt that he should not be involved in this matter today. Dr. Zhao, take good care of Comrade Lin Dian, you must use good medicine to make her recover as soon as possible. Yes. Transfer Nurse Xiaoqian to take care of Comrade Lin Dian. Okay. Comrade Lin Dian, I feel very sorry that such a thing happened in the hospital. You see, if you need anything, just mention it, our health center will try its best to meet your needs. Nothing needed, thank you. The beauty nodded faintly. Dean Zhang also nodded. To be honest, he had a good impression of this quiet little girl, and he didn't think she was as unbearable as the rumors. Dean Zhang turned his head to look at Deputy Director Zhang, then looked at Accountant Li, and nodded at them. You guys go back too, this is a hospital, and patients still need to rest. But matter has not been resolved, and Accountant Li does not want to go back. The matter of his own daughter can be big or small. He is not Li Shuangqin's mother's long hair and short knowledge. He thinks that Lin Dian is made, homophonic swa, and thinks that Lin Dian's reputation is not good, so he can't sue her daughter. He knows that if the matter goes to the relevant departments, people will not see whose reputation is good, but evidence, his daughter's beating is a fact, the evidence is conclusive, and it is not easy to rely on. Gone. Li Shuangqin's mother glared at Lin Dian with a gloomy face, and reached out to pull Accountant Li. I want to see if she dares to sue. What are you messing around? Accountant Li frowned, and his face became gloomy. Alright, let's go. Accountant Li wanted to teach his wife a lesson in the hospital again, but Dean Zhang immediately blackened his face and waved them out. Deputy Director Zhang looked at the gloomy face of his eldest brother and knew that his eldest brother was angry. This matter was no longer negotiable, and it was impossible for them to solve the matter in the health center. Turned his head to look at Lin Dian, who was silent on the hospital bed, and then looked at Li Shuangqin's mother with an angry face, Li Shuangqin with a little happiness on his face, and the hesitant Accountant Li. He couldn't help but shake his head. What is he doing? People are not so anxious. Brother, then I'll go back first. Let's go back. Dean Zhang waved his hand. After I go back, put the factory in order. Since you claim to be a militarized factory, you must have the appearance of militarized management, and don't make a dislike of the four and lose the face of the troops. Yes. I know. After I go back, I must discuss with the leadership team in the factory to discuss future management issues. Deputy Factory Director Zhang had already made up his mind to rectify the factory, and he no longer paid attention to Li Shuangqin's affairs, and turned around and walked out of the door directly. Li Shuangqin's father was dragged out by Li Shuangqin's mother. Only Dean Zhang, Dr. Zhao, and Wang Jianjian, who nominally had something to do with Lin Dian, were left in the room. Dean Zhang looked left and right, looking at the extremely small room, and the corner was still full of sundries, and he couldn't help but feel a wall in his heart. That's really not a complaint. I am not happy for a long time. Such an environment is really not suitable for patients to recuperate. Dean Zhang looked around, and the room was not only chaotic but also empty. There was nothing, not even a necessary hot water kettle for a health center. I couldn't help but feel a little annoyed in my heart. This was really a dereliction of duty in his work. Dr. Zhao, there is no kettle in the house. Forget it, you go and call Xiao Qian and ask her to quickly find a hot water kettle and make a pot of hot water. And Dean Zhang looked at the empty table and secretly despised Wang Jianjian. If this incident hadn't been for this man being irresponsible, it wouldn't have happened. Let Xiao Qian go to the logistics department to receive a few daily necessities for Comrade Lin Jie alone: jars, lunch boxes, basins, towels, soap, and toothpaste. There are also quilts, and they all come with a set. It is a little unlikely that Deputy Director Wang will give Comrade Lin Jie Zhang Luo's personal belongings. In today's matter, their hospital has some responsibility, and it is also appropriate to provide some help to Comrade Lin Jie. Okay. Dr. Zhao nodded. To be honest, she regrets it in her heart now. She didn't expect that Li Shuangqin's parents would have such an attitude towards this matter. If she had known about this, she would not have informed Dean Zhang, resulting in now she and Dean Zhang are not human beings inside and out. Lin Jie glanced at Dean Zhang and Dr. Zhao, her eyes moved, and she didn't say anything. Comrade Lin Jie, do you need anything else? Dean Zhang looked at Lin Jie, who was still sitting there indifferently, and asked gently. No, thank you. Lin Jie looked at Dean Zhang indifferently and nodded slightly. Dean Zhang couldn't help but smile lightly. You're welcome, this is what our health center should do. Then you have a good rest, and we won't bother you. If there is anything, ask Nurse Xiao Qian or Dr. Zhao to come to me. Lin Jie nodded lightly. Dean Zhang nodded at Lin Jie, turned around and left the ward, and when he left, he didn't give Wang Jianjian a look. This time, he had some opinions about this Deputy Director Wang who had an excellent reputation. Dr. Zhao looked at Wang Jianjian, then at Lin Jie, nodded, and turned to leave the ward. The people in the room left one after another, and finally only Wang Jianqi was left. Wang Jianqi looked at the chubby beauty with her eyes closed and leaning against the wall, and couldn't help but feel irritated. You'd better stop causing trouble for me, or I won't let you go. The beautiful girl opened her eyes and looked at the back of Wang Jianqi leaving, and curled the corners of her mouth sarcastically. Who doesn't let go of who is not necessarily? Nurse Xiao Qian quickly walked into Lin Jie's ward, and when she came over, she was carrying a hot water kettle in her left hand and a net bag in her right hand, which contained enamel jars, aluminum lunch boxes, toothbrushes, tooth jars, towels, and other things. Nurse Xiao Qian is about the same age as Li Shuangqin in the factory, both about 20 years old, but Nurse Xiao Qian loves to laugh, with 2 dimples and 1 smile. Her eyes are not big, but she is very attentive. She is very sincere when she looks at people, treats patients very kindly, and smiles like a big sister next door. It is completely different from Li Shuangqin's seemingly gentle, but snarky appearance. Comrade Xiaolin, are you thirsty? I'll pour you a glass of water. The water is a little hot, don't worry, let it dry before drinking. Nurse Xiao Qian put down the things in her hand, turned back to Lin Jie, and smiled. How do you feel? Do you want to lie down and rest for a while? Thanks, no. Lin Jie felt very dizzy, and she was nauseous when she moved. At this time, the water had not been drunk, the lunch had not been eaten, and the drip had not been ordered, so it would be very troublesome to lie down directly. Excuse me, can I still buy food in the cafeteria at this time? You haven't had lunch yet? Nurse Xiao Qian looked at Lin Jie with some surprise. Lin Jie smiled slightly and didn't say anything. Although the deputy director of the factory, Zhang, said that all her expenses in the health center were under the control of their factory, no one helped her cook, and she could not eat. At noon, perhaps Dr. Zhao was distracted by the fact that she was going to call the police, so she never remembered that she hadn't eaten yet, so she left directly after settling her down. So, from morning to now, she has only drunk a glass of water, and now she is hungry and thirsty. Coupled with the injury, she was a little dizzy at this moment. You must be hungry. I'll go to the cafeteria to get food for you, the canteen of the health center. You can eat at any time. Is there anything you'd like to eat in particular? Eggs, rice porridge, greens. Because of dizziness, Lin Jie spoke as concisely as possible. Okay, I'll be back soon. Nurse Xiao Qian nodded and turned to leave. The hospital moved quickly. and as soon as Nurse Xiaoqian left, Dr. Zhao walked in with a few interns. Comrade Xiaolin, the ward has been a little nervous these days, and I have wronged you by letting you live here. Lin Jie smiled. Dr. Zhao, don't say that, I'm already very grateful that the health center can take me in. The ward where Lin Jie lives is indeed very small. A bed, a table and a chair occupy most of the room. The wall next to the table is full of sundries, and although other places are free, they are also littered with garbage. Dr. Zhao led someone to remove the clutter in the house, and simply cleaned up the house, and in an instant, the small space became much more spacious and bright. The bed in the utility room is a wooden plank bed with no mattress and lies on it, hard. Bang bangs, very uncomfortable. Dr. Zhao thought very thoughtfully, and led someone to remake Lin Jie's bed, put a mattress, change the dry and fresh bedding, draw the curtains, change the tables and chairs, and install a bright light bulb. Either way, at this point, this small room finally has the feeling of a real hospital room. In the end, Dr. Zhao helped Lin Jie sit on the edge of the bed, took her temperature, gave her an injection, hung a drip, and waited for Nurse Xiaoqian to enter the house before she left. Not to mention, this ward looks quite comfortable when it's cleaned up like this. Nurse Xiaoqian looked around with a smile. It's true that the house is still the same room, but it looks completely different. Drink water, it's cold. Lin Jie nodded, took the water cup handed over by Nurse Xiaoqian and drank several sips. Slow down, Comrade Xiaolin, drink less, and I'll have to eat later. I have to say that Nurse Xiaoqian is very good at taking care of people. With the help of Nurse Xiaoqian, Lin Jie fed her stomach, solved her physiological problems, drank water, took medicine, and lay down on the bed without stopping. Because Nurse Xiaoqian was temporarily seconded, she had other patients to take care of, so after Lin Jie lay down to rest, Nurse Xiaoqian left the ward. The ward became quiet again. Lin Jie lay on the bed without sleep, looking out the window with wide eyes. The sky was very high, the clouds were very light, and occasionally a few birds flew by. Lin Jie's head is still very dizzy, her wrist is still very painful, and her body. The plank bed was still a little hard, and there was no way to compare it to her large and comfortable princess bed. This incomparably real feeling made her understand that she had really crossed over. Look at the light bulbs that are not beautiful at all, look at the enamel jars that are very characteristic of the period, look at the large square table with only 2 drawers, look at the wooden lattice window and the small flower cotton curtain hanging from a wire. Lin Jie's head began to hurt again. Although she really wants to stay away from those bad people and bad things in her previous life, she is still a little reluctant to suddenly retreat from an era of advanced science and technology to a place where there is a lack of food and clothing, tickets for shopping, and letters of introduction when you go out. What's more, the person she was wearing was too fat, and the fat on her body was almost piled up on the entire single bed, and the weight was too heavy to make the plank bed creak and squeak. She was really scared. If she was not careful, the plank bed would be crushed by her. She really doesn't like this kind of weight at all. Thinking about the calamity, pitiful and pathetic short life of the beautiful girl in the book, Lin Jie is even more depressed.